The government always said that I was worth $1,100 a month.
In our world, you're a successful agent, right? Like you make six figures without even rolling out of bed.
I've never worked so little and made so much. Yeah, it's been, I guess, a change that I never thought was possible.
Agent Boost.
All right, everybody. Really excited to do this episode. It's been a long time coming.
It's been in the works.
Yeah, it's been on the roadmap for a long time. But we've got our friend, the man, the myth, the legend, Todd Moffitt here. Who
glad to be here.
Yep, one of our agents, one of our core guys here, and he has a really cool story, kind of a journey into the industry, and I think he's one of the agents that really does it the right way and cares a lot, comes from a position of empathy, and does really, really well. And Todd's probably, I think probably on average, you get more positive reviews and good things said about you than probably only any other agent.
It's true.
Oh,
so
I should look at some of those.
Yeah, Todd, why don't you give us your background and okay. bio. Tell us your story, how you got in the industry.
A little
right.
Closer.
So I guess prior to coming to Agent Boost, I don't know how you'd call it a career, but I have been on disability for 18 years with a kind of a non-typical mental illness. And I got paychecks of $1,100 a month saying, here's your disability check. And in 2019, I was told that I have to do a major medication overhaul. I was starting to have some permanent side effects from what I was taking. And I planned on doing that after a family vacation. We'd gone to New York City. And just ironically, it was a couple of weeks before the first reported case of COVID. And me and my daughter, we actually did get sick, and we didn't think anything of it, but we remember one distinct feature is that we went to this Cuban restaurant just off Times Square. We couldn't taste a thing. It was just so kind of ironic. But anyway, that's besides the point. So when I got back, I started this, I had to taper off all the stuff that I was on and
probably rough.
Yeah, taper back, taper onto the new stuff. But I started having some results that I had never experienced. And when we can't curse on here, right?
You can say what you PG-13.
When shiz hit the fan, like February-ish, I asked my family, I said, have you guys noticed a difference? Because I feel tranquil. I feel peace. And they all just agreed, yeah, it's definitely different. And that kind of started the mindset of, man, I wonder if I can hold a job. I got some advice that I can't hold myself to the previous years not being able to hold a job, and because something has changed, something has drastically changed, and so I had to change that mindset. Is that I'm not bound by who I was. Something changed significantly.
Did you always want to have a job before that?
I would do my best, but it's significantly hard when you can't adhere to a schedule.
Yeah.
Or you don't get along with people. And so that was a challenge, but I remember Seth, I think he's the first one that relayed your message about, hey, we're doing this thing. You can get licensed as a health insurance agent, learn the business, and, you can adhere to the schedule that you can work.
So for some context, Seth is my best friend who lives by you, and you've been friends.
No, he's my best friend.
Oh, okay. Yes. Well, he's one of those guys. He has multiple best friends for sure. I would definitely say he's your best friend too. Yeah, great guy. We'll have Seth on one time
too. That's true.
But yeah, he's actually, his wife and my wife are cousins, and we're actually closer than the relatives. So that's the claim. But yeah, Seth had kind of been dabbling part-time into insurance, and kind of expressed what we were doing and growing, right?
Well, and it was more about flexibility, and obviously, you know, you had a hard time at the time to be able to have this rigid 9 to 5, you know, and being able to have it work with your schedule, right?
So he told you, you know, maybe you should try to get your insurance license, right?
Yeah, and you just mentioned, you know, I won't have any expectations on you. You know, you can work the schedule. You know, and you and I had done the T-shirt stuff and Comic-Cons and stuff. So I know you were always looking for opportunities to help.
Yeah, so
I'm gonna jump in there too, and I think one of the kind of leading themes that I think that we want to convey in this episode is, you know, and we'll get into it a little bit later on, but Todd, you're a successful insurance agent in the industry. You know, whether you recognize it or not, you're someone that's highly successful, and I think that, you know, there's not this cookie cutter mold of who you think is going to be successful. I've been doing this for, you know, almost 18 years. And it's interesting because, you know, you come across somebody who's, you know, got a bachelor's degree, I've got a master's degree, I'm running a PNC shop. I, you know, have all this, you know, I'm conceivably doing okay. And they can't sell worth a damn, and they're not motivated, or they're not good at this job, and they can't make it work. And then, you know, I see somebody who's a server at a restaurant that is just, they're hungry, they're looking for an opportunity, they're good at communication skills, and they're articulate, or they just have a great personality, and because they care about people, they are amazing at this job. So I guess one of the things that is out there is, I think people have these preconceived notions of what an insurance agent looks like and who's going to be successful, and that's not always the case. And I think, you know, you're just a great example of that.
Yeah, and what you were talking about was this guy Seth and I that we were talking about had a prior business that when I had my hiatus in the insurance industry, grew and built a successful apparel and marketing company. And we would have Todd and his family come work when we had extra work and earn a few bucks on the side in addition to the disability payments, basically, right?
Yeah.
So, and we always, you know, relied on you guys to help out and do a good job. And so it was always a good relationship there. And then that kind of transitioned over to when we were doing more insurance. You know, it was kind of like you saw that as an opportunity of maybe I can essentially earn a couple bucks here and there on the side, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I just, with that pressure that you took off, like, you know, there's no expectation. You know, my wife was paying our bills. And so I think that maybe I was a little bit ignorant to what the success rate was, right? It's like the numbers aren't very good at how many people stay in the industry.
Yeah,
that's true.
So I think that was to my advantage where, you know, you guys...
Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, you guys had always... Here's one thing that I think that was very interesting is you guys were always giving me the advice that I needed to hear but didn't always want to follow. And
it's the truth.
It was always right. It was always accurate what you guys would suggest, hey Todd, don't do this, or hey, you need to do more of this. But I didn't ever want to sound like a salesman. I felt like our clientele is the most targeted demographic for scams and maybe, you know, other agencies that are looking to shovel people in and move them out. And then they have a bad Medicare experience. And so I saw that as like, wow, I've got a purpose here. I can help these people significantly.
Yeah, we'll get into that, but I want to walk back the story of, I'll set the stage a little bit. So this was the COVID year, right? This was the start of 2020. And Dan and I had been we had built a virtual opportunity for some agents. And at this current time, COVID had just kicked off.
And we had also moved our call center across county lines to a more friendly county for restrictions.
Correct. So we spun up a satellite office, you know, across town, across the border, so we could operate was it illegal? Our non-following some of the protocol call center so we could help people, right?
Yep.
And I don't say it was a call center because for sure it was not a call center at that time, but it was a bunch of agents that were helping people. Yeah, an incubator, helping people virtually. And so this would have been AEP 2020. So of the year 2020 when everything was still shut down, locked down. And for some reason, you decided that was your entry point into the insurance industry.
Yep.
Todd, you got licensed. Did you pass the test the first time?
No.
Okay.
Second time.
So a little adversity. Okay. Keep going.
I think that's good. There's probably people listening who are like, yeah, I mean, I can do this. Or I failed my test once or twice too. I mean, you're not alone.
Yeah. I remember taking the AHIP in Brian's office in Sandy.
Yeah, and so we had one of the keys to our success of us growing was we had this virtual agency where we took about 30 agents in this boiler room type environment, and they were helping seniors during AEP 2020 when everybody else was scrambling to try to convert virtually. There was no in-home meetings really. It was really a transition year. And we were fortunate that we'd already kind of built the infrastructure and the tools and tech to do so in a compliant way. And so in this environment, I believe you came walking into AEP
October,
mid AEP, right? It was,
yeah.
So
it was,
he walks in, here I have a friend that I know needs some guidance, help. He shows up in the middle of the chaos of AEP.
Well,
and I basically said, dude, you're getting thrown to the wolves, right?
Mm-hmm. Almost verbatim, just like that.
You're like, in fact, that is what you said.
Yeah.
You're good luck.
And that core group of people, that were at WeWork, I just felt like, these are people that are making a difference, right? And that's what I wanted to do. And you had a big part in my training indirectly, right? I mean, I would come to you for questions when Dave or Nate wasn't available. You want me to tell that?
Yeah, tell it. Yeah.
Okay. So I get on this call, pretty much a golden call. It would have been a sale, easy. This lady says, I am looking for a Part C plan. And I said, Part C, that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And so after she hung up on me, I went over to Mike. I'm like, hey, this lady was asking for Part C. And I remember Mike's just like, dude, you need to go read Medicare and You.
So for some context, if you're not a Medicare seller, Part C is Advantage plan, right? That's like the bread and butter of what we're doing. That's like saying, I want to sign up for what you're offering. Can you enroll me? And he's like, no, we don't do that. And but that was, you had a willingness to try it, of course. And I was a little bit astounded that we'd been through, because by that point you'd got a license,
like AHIP.
You'd done AHIP,
carrier
certs,
mm-hmm.
and obviously it had never made the connection that Part C was Advantage,
Yeah.
and that's just how confusing it is. But, at that time, I actually extracted myself from our main office. I was down in this office of these 30 or 40 virtual agents, and I was posting up selling as well alongside all these agents. So it was me and Heather Woody, basically down there in the office every day, answering questions while we were, in the trenches. So we built it, brick by brick, and
kind of from the perspective of, okay, post up next to me and listen to me.
Yep.
Let me show you how I'm doing this right here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm teaching you how I'm saying this. This is what I'm doing. This is how the scripting is. Remember that it doesn't have to be the exact word, but you got to follow this, this is the path on the scripting. Yeah.
And from that perspective, I think there was a really important lesson in us for the business is at that time, call center. It was either call center. You were a GoHealth, you were eHealth, or you were a field agent, right?
Yep.
And there wasn't this kind of hybrid blend necessarily, and there wasn't really a belief that a lot of these agents who are now some of our top agents who have books of business of close to 1,000 policies and such,
or 3,000.
Yeah. And I helped them build that belief that it was possible because we sat there in the trenches and did it with them, and showed them how to do it. And you were a part of that. So, you got from showing up mid AEP.
Yeah. No Medicare, no sales experience.
No sales experience, no Medicare.
He reminded me of Ricky Bobby a little bit. He's like, I don't know what to do with my hands.
Yeah.
Where do they go?
I felt like I was on a spaceship. and I'm not sure what to do with my hands.
Be good just to hold him down by your side. Yeah, great.
Yeah, and this was a couple days in where he came and he's like, this lady just wanted a Part C. What is that? Do we do that? Or I'm like, you blew it.
It would have been my first sale.
Yeah,
but
and to your credit, even with all the your prior challenges and stuff, you stuck with it, and you had a kind of a core group of guys that you could kind of sat amongst and you listened to, and you kind of got on the job training, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I remember specifically, I think that, one of the big impactors, one of the big core guys, I remember him mentioning, like, you got to make hay while the sun is shining. We don't know if this is going to go. And it was early on when I think you guys were really experimenting with it, but he's like, just keep showing up. Just
Who was
keep
that?
Dialing. It was Dave.
Dave, yeah.
Dave.
So Dave is another one of our great longtime agents, and he's probably the OG pioneer of the field agent being a hybrid agent, a virtual agent, and doing it extremely successfully.
He's the OG.
Yeah, we'll have to get
that was Sandwich Shop days.
Dave's owed he needs his own podcast episode for sure. But Todd, we were fortunate enough for him that we kind of sandwiched in between some experienced agents and just kind of said, listen, train by ear a little bit to how these agents are helping people, right?
I remember that first week I came to you and I was like, my voice sounds really funny. I feel odd. He's like, you're sitting next to Nate.
You'd adopted his tonality and his voice, huh?
Yeah.
Guess so, a little bit, but
yeah, Nate's been on the podcast before, and you can go back and listen. He has a very unique sounding voice that honestly is like, it's like a bait in the water. It's for fish. The people are lured to it. It's very unique sounding voice, and he does very well with it.
It reminds me of Breaking Bad. Do you remember Badger?
Yeah.
Bad?
Yep.
Reminds me of Badger a little bit.
Yeah.
I can see that.
That's a good analogy. Yeah, it does
Okay.
sound like
I can
Badger.
connect that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think helped you too, Todd, is I have this belief, especially with people when they're new, of course, that we do the baby steps, right? And that I think we only started you off with 1 or 2 carriers and a handful of states, and this is something that fundamentally I believe in from a training process, and this is where I think a lot of people go wrong. Is they get into the space and they want to do Medicare, they want to do life, they want to do ACA, they want to do it all. Suddenly they have 37 carrier appointments and they suck at all of them, And so I think that it's a problem. And I think one of the things that probably helped you was that we said, hey, we want you to focus on just this 1 or 2 carrier. Mm-hmm. Here's these specific lead types or opportunities, and this is how we want you to do it, and just kind of rinse and repeat and become better and more proficient. And that's kind of typically been our training approach for a lot of agents. And then as they progress and become more proficient, we add more carriers and more states. And I think that's what we did with you, correct?
Well, that's one of the areas too that I was talking about is the advice is that I started to get off track a little bit, like, hey, what about, adding some life insurance? What about doing this? And multiple times, probably from all leadership type of sources, Dave's like, just do Medicare. Focus on Medicare. Mike, focus on Medicare.
Yep.
Keep doing this. Stay on track.
Yep.
Don't get distracted by the next shiny thing.
Yep.
Master one thing. Yep. That's a pretty common theme. So Todd shows up. We'll continue the story because it's really important, I think. Mid-AEP in the chaos of probably the most transformational year in the history of the business. Learning a new product, a new way, not knowing really what he's doing. I think you showed up at the beginning of November, so like really the middle of AEP, and it was kind of like, I'll be honest, I didn't have many expectations for you. I was like, dude, you got to go grind, but it's not every man for himself, but it's almost every man for himself, and you just got to learn on the job training right now, and I'll be available to answer questions, but other than that, you got to figure this out.
Yeah, well, and for perspective, it's like you rolled in too, and it was like hey, so Todd, tell us about yourself, man. What were you doing? You weren't doing door-to-door sales before. You weren't selling as a SaaS person. You weren't selling another insurance line. It's like, what have you been doing? What was your most recent history? You're like, oh, I was on disability and not working.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and not only that, but you're trying to learn and ask questions to guys who are trying to be make hay while the sun's shining, and so
AEP.
a lot of those guys were collectively very kind to impart their wisdom and time and help you. and you got your first enrollment, right? And then,
3.5 hour phone call.
yes,
Hey.
all right, that's right. I remember.
Hey, listen, look, that's great. So for everybody, listen, Todd had a 3.5 hour phone call. Look, it might have been clunky. It might have not followed, all the components in the right order of a phone call, of what a good phone call should look like. But I'm pretty sure that in a 3.5 hour phone call, you covered all the basics of how the plan worked.
Pretty sure.
Yeah.
Pretty sure. And
I remember looking at that enrollment and being like, "Oh, holy hell, that poor lady!" Like
she is,
three.
you did say she'll be a client for life.
Yeah.
She is still a client.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
3.5 hours, and we're like, "You guys you trauma bonded. You guys went through that experience together, and she's never gonna leave you."
We might have had to pay $100 in minutes for that phone call just on usage.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
maybe.
Yeah, I remember but I was proud of you, and then you really figured it out, and I think you kind of developed your own unique style and methodology, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But continuing on the story, I think you ended that first half annual enrollment with about 35 enrollments, correct?
Yep.
And you got paid out on that in January, and I think for the first time in a long time, you had some extra coin in your pocket, right?
Yeah, I mean, because of course my wife, she's cautiously optimistic. I don't even think she was. I didn't think she thought that this would turn into something long term. Probably just because of the past. I have not been able to hold a job, a 9 to 5, and so she had the 9 to 5, taking care of the family, and now all of a sudden, hey, look, here's almost $10,000 in AEP money.
You contributed, yeah.
Cash.
Did that feel good to be able to?
Oh yeah.
To contribute and be able to.
After so long of not being able to, and that really messes with your self-esteem, really gets in your head. It does.
Yeah, and so as I remember, you were kind of emboldened, and you continued to do pretty well. You had some ups and downs, but you continued to sell during OEP, right?
Well, I would almost say you kind of surprised yourself, I think, right? In some ways, you're like, oh,
Yeah.
damn, I have 10 grand from doing work for a month or two.
Yep. I even told Ashley
And then you were able to kind of survive that first year, and you were still on disability, correct? So it was an augmenting of that revenue, and then you had another annual enrollment, correct?
How many apps did you write that next year? So 2021, 50, 100, something like that?
60 something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So by then, you'd been in the business about a year. You had about 100, 120 clients on residual, correct? Mm-hmm. And then it was Ashley came over into the business as well, your wife, and started working with us on the W2 channel. Mm-hmm. And it was like, hey, this is the potential to become a family business, right?
Yeah. I mean, because the residuals, they weren't quite enough to cover the bills.
Right.
But when Ashley decided to jump in, we were taking a little bit of a leap because, like you guys knew, you guys remember the day where I was stressed, and you guys came out of your side of the office in Sandy, and you guys were always checking in. Todd, how's it going? Oh, I just lost disability.
Because you earn too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this is kind of a proud point for me that I want to point out is you got notified that you were losing your disability, right?
Oh yeah.
And why was that?
Along with a $10,000 bill from him.
Yep. Mm-hmm. For what reason?
For making too much.
Making too much money. And so Todd, you were stressed out about that, but I was super happy for you. Like I was actually elated for you. If you remember right, I was like, dude, that is the coolest thing. You earned your way off of disability, Yeah. And at that time, it still wasn't a net positive for you because it was like you'd almost just kind of replaced that plus your wife's income, and so you weren't necessarily in this.
It's like net.
Yeah, massive financial situation. But I knew what that meant was that you were on your way to greater, things and greater financial stability. And so, that annual enrollment, you kind of continued, and you've kind of had your path. But one thing that you said to me that sticks with me is you said the government thought I was worth what?
The government always said that I was worth $1,100 a month.
Yep. Government always said I was worth $1,100 a month, and you proved, that
10x.
Yep, that you're not 10x that, and that I don't know personally anybody that has worked their way off disability status with a mental health situation. And so for that reason, like, I think you're super unique. I'm always super proud of you and your journey, because you've never looked back from that point, right?
And it's still a hindrance. I mean, I still have those chaotic moments, and I have to step away. But having this position, this career, it allows me to do that and still pay bills. And you always said eventually you're going to know how much your time is worth, and I do,
Yeah.
Well, I also was going to say, were you that stressful moment when you were basically kicked off a disability and had a bill? Did that make you so stressed? Like, did you kind of cave for a hot minute? How did you lean into that more? Did that motivate you to work more?
Yes and yes. I mean, obviously the stress of it, okay, I've got this great residual income now. Look, we're making a little bit more than our bills, and then they cut that $1,100 off, and now my residuals are under what we were paying our bills with.
Your guaranteed money,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But once Ashley came on board, she went in the W-2 for a little bit, and then went 1099.
Gave some stability.
So yeah, now his wife Ashley is in the business with him as a 1099 agent. They're both working together. You have clients on the books residually and doing better than ever before. Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think is so cool about that is I don't think both of you still do it in the most prototypical way. And there's even when there's challenges that you're still facing or consistency, that consistency is, well, I show back up. I got knocked down for a little bit, and I'm having a rough patch, but I know I'll get my way back. And this industry has allowed you to build a career and be successful, and while you still are able to deal with that, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been I guess a change that I never thought was possible.
Yeah.
$1,100 a month. That's what my expectation was for 18 years.
Well, and I also was just talking to you even before, like, off the camera too. I was just saying, Todd, what have you been up to? How are things? How's Ashley? And you're like, oh, she's on a cruise with the girls.
Yep.
And I was like, oh man, that's awesome. How come you're not there? And, we talked about it a little bit, but how cool is it that, 4 or 5 years ago,
yeah,
they wouldn't have been on a cruise, that wouldn't be happening, and that made me pretty happy, candidly, just, before we even popped on here.
I think another thing that I realized is again, getting ahead of myself is where, I would think, how can I make a bigger impact? I need to replicate agents like me. But I was never in a position to do that. But I've recognized that you guys are, right? And you're trying to find those people that genuinely want to help people. It's not an interactional, what am I trying to say?
Transactional at one time, yeah.
It's not just a one-time thing. I guess my big thing is that I realize, man, I can be a big help for people. Yep. They might not even know it, but I can be.
Yeah, I'll say everybody has their own unique selling style, right? Like, I would consider myself more of like a smooth operator type salesperson. I know the answers. I'm going to come across polished and professional. Todd, I coined the term for you, like empathetic selling, like selling with empathy. Mm-hmm. And when you hear Todd talk to his clients on the phones, he really does, sounds cheesy to say it, but you love and empathize with these people that you've never met before, and it translates over, and you legitimately care about them because you kind of see yourself in them or see them in you, mm-hmm. type of thing, and you take a very empathetic sales approach, correct?
Oh, 100%. I've told Ashley, I've told my girls too, is that first time interaction, you assume that the person you're talking to they're going through some real challenges in life. If you assume that, you're going to be right almost all the time. And so that's what I try to emphasize in in my voice is that, my inflections are different where I'm trying to empathize right from the get-go. Maybe it's, in fact, yesterday, right? I spoke with a lady. In the first 5 seconds, I hear a big ol'
Size. Yeah.
I'm getting harassed again.
Yep. And here I go. I'm just like, oh, I'll bet you're getting a lot of calls. You have no idea. Yeah, I get 20 a day. I'm like, I'm so sorry about that. Have any of them been helpful? Mm-hmm. And then it just went from there. Now she's a client.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good line that, you use, and I would say is, I'm sorry. It makes my job really hard for those of us who are, doing the right thing and doing a good job, kind of breaks through, cuts through on that. But talk about like your philosophy on selling with empathy, because, you're able to connect with people and really draw the line between what their health insurance should be doing for them and how it like plays into their life and how it actually helps them. Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, when I'm talking to somebody, I'm not assuming they're a sale. If they're asking questions, then they need some help, but they may be in a good situation.
Right.
And I'm never going to try to convince them to do otherwise, unless, another leading question is just, what don't you like about it? Is there something they're not doing good for you? Is the plan, what is it that you need? If they lead on that, I don't like it. They're not paying the bills. They're not doing this or that. Copays are too high. Then I can go into, we can look at some options. But most of my interactions, I think everybody that takes calls could probably relate to this, but everybody is literally going through some shit. So you hear about the challenges that they're going through, and as a well-informed agent, you start to think, okay, well, what are the solutions to these? Is XYZ plan going to do that? And so I love having that, perspective where I do literally get to be on their side.
So let me ask you this, and this is one thing that I, try to help agents with is, for the agents listening that are field agents that go to the kitchen table, windshield time, that kind of thing, they can easily relationship build and build rapport because they walk into the house, they're, again, at the kitchen table, they get to see the family pictures on the wall, they get to see, things and attributes and traits. And so I think in some ways, it's very easy to form a relationship that way. But I think some people really struggle over the phone to build that rapport, that trust, and build a relationship. And that's one thing that I would say you do really well, right? And I think that you would say that you have a lot of your clients that they really trust you. You have a good relationship with them. If you call them or you talk to them, it's Todd. They know who you are, right?
Mm-hmm. Almost just maybe 1 week or 2 weeks ago, I had a client in California call me and said that he had sat down with somebody face to face, and he decided to come to me because I helped his daughter. Mm-hmm. So I beat out somebody who was face to face so I wrote 2 supplements for.
Yeah, that's one thing that I try to coach agents on all the time is, just because you meet with somebody in person, that doesn't always mean you're doing a good job. People will always respond to value, and you can create a relationship with people virtually or in person, but it comes down to, did you do a good job? Did you create a rapport? And are you professional? And what that means ultimately is, did you help that person? Do they see value in your help and services, right? And like you said, I have many clients that I'd never met in person before, but they would always call me. They still call me,
Especially your Hawaii clients.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and then I beat them in person,
Nice.
sometime down the road. It's cool. But I think you do a really good job. And this is how Dan and I always think that Medicare Advantage should be sold and is designed to be sold, is with consultative selling, empathetic selling, because you're really trying to help people with their health and wealth. You're really trying to solve the 2 things that are the most important to people. And by offering them a solution in some sort of plan that we're offering them, right?
Yeah.
And too many agents get caught up in I'm just trying to sell or shove or force something onto somebody and sell them, convince them to get this.
And I'm probably echoing something that you guys have said in the past, but any Joe Blow can enroll people. Mm-hmm. You are the product. The agent is the product.
Yep.
And when you create that You can even create that image for them. Hey, imagine not having to build a relationship with some rando. You will have one person that you can contact with questions about Medicare and concerns that something is not going right. You'll have one person. That's it. You'll have my direct line. You know, I get back to people as quick as I can, usually within 24 hours. But it's pretty easy to sell yourself when you realize the role that you're playing for these people.
Yeah, I love it. And you have become, not only are you empathetic and you sell, you know, that way, a consultative sale, but you've also become an expert and you've learned a lot about the industry and you've dove in and you are actually very, very knowledgeable. One of my amusing conversations is when you were arguing with Seth about which one of you knows more about Medicare. He may be producing more, but you're like, I actually know more about the business and the industry than you do, and proven to be factual, you know? So,
but you've very much, you know, moved up the pecking order, you know what I mean, so to speak. Yeah. And it's actually one of those things when we kind of have conversations and you group together a handful of agents and say, hey, if I wanted to, you know, round up a posse of people who actually like really knew like deep details, qualifications, weird nuances, SCPs, like really, I mean, you're one of those handful of people who have really studied and actually learned throughout the business.
Well, and
throughout the years.
That's a direct result of how plugged in you guys are, to be quite frank. You guys have this podcast. Before that, you'd be consistent with your, your Monday morning meetings, and you're giving us that information. You're so plugged in, but it's really up to us to fill in. You know, oh, they're talking about future of FFM, right? And you can plug yourself in by just reading Medicare news. Mm-hmm. But you guys have, and that was another thing I wanted to hit on, is that from that first year, watching Agent Boost grow, every year it just got better and better, you know? There was always more the next year, always more opportunity, always improving to some CRM or Sunfire or new product or something. You guys were always making sure that we could stay busy.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, that's how, you know, Dan and I feel the same thing. And I talked about that graphic of the squiggly success line. You know, that's how it is in business too. You know, sometimes you feel like you're making progress. Sometimes you feel like you're spinning your wheels or going back or dealing with adversity. And then, you know, you look back at it and go, man, we've come a long way in just 4.5 years, 5 years, you know, by doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I appreciate that, Todd, because we do think about that, you know, not to be cliche and cheesy, but the whole, you know, rising tide, you know, raises all the boats. Mm-hmm. Right. And we do think about that. And as the company continues to grow, it's, we haven't forgotten who are the people in the trenches and how did we get here? Like, why are we successful? And we always talk about it, you know, like, you know, the agents and the producers, they're the partners. They're the ones that we need to focus on making them successful. And our success is just a byproduct of it. Right. And so we sit there and think about, as we keep growing and have more revenue and have more and more opportunities, we're just continuing to reinvest that into the opportunity for all of our agents. So, you know, and some people they're never going to be pleased, but we do appreciate it when people recognize it, you know.
And I love the fact that when you see an agent who is, maybe they're not hitting numbers, but they are diligently trying to learn, they're diligently trying to be here and do those basics that you talk about, you guys give them the resources and you give them the, you know, hey, keep your chin up, because, you know, once you know your numbers, you know that the sale's coming around the corner. You know you're going to find people that need you.
Yeah, and that's really important. One thing that you just hit on is, unfortunately, time is kind of an enemy of a lot of people in this industry, right? In the sense that, look, it's not easy. Like, CMS hasn't made it easy. The carriers, just the way commissions work and payouts and the compensation and everything else in the industry, it's like it takes a lot of time, honestly. And this is something I even talk to carriers about, is like, look, when somebody first comes into the business, there's so much to know and to do a good job. I mean, you're talking about, you know, partial duals, fully duals. What's the eligibility level in that state? Do they have to be Quimby or Quimby Plus to enroll in this state? You know, it's like there's so much to learn.
Yeah,
and
it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, and what you said is, it takes time for people, and it's that effort. And so sometimes people want to see a direct result of, I showed up, I did this, I made sales, I made revenue. It's just not that easy.
Or wanting to know every aspect before you start.
Oh, that drives me crazy. That's a different issue. But it's more. It does take time, but it takes that dedicated, consistent effort, and it takes the dials, and it takes a lot of no's, and it takes a lot of, I call it getting a bloody nose. You got to go. I used to knock doors for a lot of years, doing door to door, and I'd say, dude, go knock on a lot of doors, go get your bloody nose.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. You have to go through the process. And you're not going to be good, and it's a big investment of time. But if you keep putting forth the energy and the effort, eventually the results come. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, and that's ultimately why we wanted to have you on the podcast, Todd, is to highlight that there's no one way to do this, right? And sometimes agents have different talents and abilities, and you might find an agent who's extremely gold-tongued, or they're a smooth talker, they are a hard worker, they're a grinder, they're able to talk their way into sales. Or you may have somebody who's able to work really hard up front or invest into leads. But also there's another skill of, sometimes it's just the ones that are able to grind, that have attrition. They can just make it through. And we have a lot of the agents, not just you, but some of those guys where I go, man, you're not that very good. You're not a very good salesperson, but they've been, but what their talent or what their ability has been is they're just a grinder, or they're consistent. Like I would say, Dave, for example, that we mentioned, one of the best agents in the country. His talent is he's consistent, right? Like he is going to consistently show up and
outlast you,
outgrind, outgrid everybody, and he's going to be, a top performer, and he's there for his clients.
Of all the people at at that first WeWork office, I was trying to look at who was doing what, how could I learn, but Dave was the only one where I said, I can duplicate that, because all he does, show up, take his calls,
and be kind and be consistent, and just next at bat,
and by the way, he'll be one of the agents that we obviously spotlight and bring on the podcast too. But he always writes anywhere from 400 to 600 apps a year, and I haven't even gotten a CTM for Dave in years. I mean, I think he's written over 2,000 apps since the last time I got a single CTM from him.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. And I do look back fondly, nostalgic, reflect on those early days of the WeWork, where that was kind of like the crucible of forging the business in a new direction. And there was a lot of, to what I'm talking about, a lot of different talents and personalities and traits. And some of those people, we'd had an exodus from one of the call centers, and a lot of people came over, and they were top salespeople, right? They were grinders. You had ladies that were.
Yep. Do you not think that was like such a ragtag group of just misfits?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. But there was so many different personality types and agent types and sales personalities in this room, all doing it together, and to watch how that's shaken out long term over time, and see some of those people that, I guess I would have, if I was horse betting, I probably would have bet on some other people that would have emerged to be the top performers and the top producers long term, and it didn't necessarily play out that way. Some of them it did, with like the Seans and the Rileys and those guys, of course, but some of them, had a lot of talent and ability, sounded really good on the phone, or were very knowledgeable, and they just got outlasted. They got out.
Well, that's one of those things that I try to convey over and over and over, and you've probably heard it from me too, is it's that consistency. And we see a lot of these top performers, they show up for a season, they work really hard during AEP, and guess what? They write X amount of business, they already have rapid disenrollments, they don't work very hard during OEP because, they're tired from working during AEP, and then they already lost a big chunk of their business they wrote during AEP. They don't have a successful year, they're not engaged throughout the year, they lose half their book throughout the year, and they're actually not that good of agents. They're good when they show up, but they're really average at best, even a lot of the top performers. And so that's what I think has been very different about you, and I'll take it all day, agents who write a good amount of business at a very consistent level.
Yeah, Todd, you remind me of the parable of the tortoise and the hare, right? Like sometimes you get the cocky hare that's or the rabbit, whatever it is. People are gonna be like, "What the hell are you talking about?" Like they don't. It's an old analogy.
Some of them are old enough, they know.
Yeah, but the rabbit burns himself out, and Todd's just a consistent, putting in time and gets to the finish line ahead.
Do I look like a turtle?
No, it's a parable. It's an analogy.
I know.
But yeah, I do you have any advice for some of the agents? One of the things is your ability to care and empathize with these people. But do you have any advice for agents if they're, maybe like you, where they don't feel like they're the slick top sales performer or something? But
yeah, I'd say you were talking about agent types. Which agent type? I think I would categorize myself as a feel good, where I need to go home feeling good, and that doesn't always result in a sale. But if I have helped someone, that's who I am, and I feel more fulfilled by operating that way. Do I have the highest numbers? No. I have in the past. I've had some good numbers, but I need to feel good. And when you feel like you've got a purpose, because for me, coming off disability, all of a sudden I have a purpose. I can help people significantly. So for me, that was more groundbreaking because I'm not a salesman. I don't consider myself a salesman. And I don't think that my clients feel like that either. I feel like that they know that this guy's going to be here to answer questions. And it's easy to be genuine when you're genuine.
Yep.
And you care.
So your advice is to be genuine.
Be genuine.
Be you, and just focus on
the money will come. That's gonna come, no problem.
It reminds me, I can't remember which CEO it was, where he was asked by a reporter, like, how do you hire such nice people or such kind people? He said, or how do you train them to be so nice and kind? He said, that's easy. We just hire nice, kind people.
Right.
And I think that's very obvious with you, and it's been great to watch you and your growth and your progression long term over time. And even when you have a rough patch, seeing yourself pick yourself back up and get going again, it's super impressive. We really appreciate you and your family and everything that you've done. And I will be honest, like if I was going to have an agent for my mom or a family member, it'd be Todd Moffitt or an agent like you that I just know would, give them the shirt off their own back and do anything they could to make sure that client is very well taken care of and that actually cares about them.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And I would say you still have rough patches, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, you're in our world, we're calling you like you're a successful agent, right? Like we deem you like you're successful because you're making six figures, and you make six figures without even rolling out of bed, right? I mean, your renewals are so high that you're making six figures whether you show up or not, and that's pretty impressive to do in a couple of years, which you've done. And so you're successful in our eyes. You still are having your rough days or your rough weeks sometimes you go through. How are you dealing with that, and how is it different now from when it was a few years ago?
Honestly, sometimes it is it's stepping away and getting some professional help or medications for certain things, but my wife is a big factor. My kids are a big factor. They've had to grow up in a pretty chaotic situation. But now, where there's more peace in the family, it's easier that they help that out.
Yeah, kind of going back to like a Maslow's kind of hierarchy of needs, when you're not stressing for survival every day, and you basically have like your basic needs met. You've probably been able to focus more, on your family and on your kids and on your wife too, I would imagine. So.
Do you have a process that you go through to kind of like get you back on track? I mean, once you're kind of you got to adjust some things medically, and then how?
Yeah, exercise and eating better. Focus on. I mean, you got to have that. I pointed something out to Seth is it's really hard for me to vacation. I don't appreciate it sometimes because I haven't been working. So it's like I have to have a little bit more balance where I'm working and then I appreciate the time off.
Yeah, I know. I feel that. We always have a work hard, play hard mindset, and I feel like then I earned it. You know what I mean? I can take that time off.
And surrounding yourself with people with that type of mindset is really good too.
How have your goals changed, so to speak? Because like I know that you come to our trainings. I know that you interact with Mike and with all of our different meetings we do here. You know, your goals maybe 4 or 5 years ago were, you know,
survive.
I need to have groceries. I need to pay my rent or whatever that is. Those were your goals, right? Over time now, I'm sure your perspective and your goals have changed, right?
Yeah.
Do you currently have some of those goals, and how does it look different now from when it was?
There was no real direction. It was, you know, what I got was what I got. But once I have a goal in place, there's a sense of, wow, I hit it. Nice. What am I going to do for myself for hitting that?
You just told me off camera what it was.
Yeah.
Did you hit your goals as AEP?
Yeah, I beat it by almost 50%.
Crushed it.
Yeah.
So good job, man. You crushed. You had an actual attainable goal. You knew exactly what it was. You exceeded it by 50%. So you murdered it. And
You did ask for 50 more.
Yeah. Okay, I moved the goalpost. Is that what you said?
Yeah, and it was. You said after that UFC fight, you're like, okay, this wasn't free. I want 50 more during AP this year.
I took Todd to our UFC suite, right? And that was a cool night. That was fun.
That was pretty awesome.
That was a great fight here in Salt Lake. So, and it was fun, and it actually motivated you.
It did.
So
You know, it's interesting that I kind of want to touch on that, Dan, because we were talking about that today. We were talking about how sometimes there's experiences and life events, and call them the finer things or vacations. And some people just unfortunately haven't been able to experience those things. And so it's almost like they don't know how good that is, right? You go, yeah. And then you go, once you've had that experience and you've sat in a suite and you eat free food and you've brought, you know, this cool event, you want to be there again, right? You want that. And it instills that in that, and it motivates you. And what that is, and what I've seen you do, is it increases your standards, right? Of what you expect for yourself and what becomes an acceptable way for you to live. And you've had to move your standards up, because you've said to me before, I can't go back to, you know, the way I was before, because it creates that dissonance where you are unhappy because you've lived at a higher standard before. You know what's possible. You've seen that out of yourself. And that's one of the things that I think we like about taking agents to experiences and trips and fine dinners and things like that, because it's like, yeah, look how great this was. Like, we want you to experience this. We want you to want it and earn it and achieve it, because it does feel good and it is better. It's worthy of pursuing, you know? Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's been, I don't know, since starting has been pretty life-changing for me and my family. Not only with the self-worth category, being a provider, but also seeing what is possible.
Yeah.
And it does hurt a little bit, because now you know what's possible. And when you don't, you know.
Yeah. You mention every once in a while that sometimes you're a little bit scared of your own potential. Cause then I
don't want to, I'm setting a bar that, you know, I don't necessarily always believe I can hit, but once you hit it, it's like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that becomes easier. And that's what we keep telling you, is like, look, you had a goal, and I told you, like, that was too easy, Todd. I know better. Remember, I told you, I said, dude, that goal's not high enough for you. Remember? Mm-hmm. And I said, dude, that's like, I've already seen you do this for a couple of years. You're smarter. You know more. We talk about being like a more skilled hunter. You're better. And so that goal just is not a good enough goal. You need to up your standards, right?
Yeah.
And so we upped it by 50%.
And then you guys, you know, obviously you make it, well, you've made it easier each year. You put the types of opportunities, you know, and I still get to sit down with people. You know, we got 3 or 4 enrollments this AEP, just sitting down in front of people and do that across the table thing. But
yep.
Yeah, every year it's a little bit easier. And I know all you guys are asking is just put in the work. We're basically hand feeding you here. Take these opportunities and, you know, find those people that need you, because, you know, you're just shuffling them out like crazy.
Yeah.
Well, do we want to talk about what you rewarded yourself with after hitting your AEP goals?
So, all right, I bought a couple guns.
Love it. What did you get?
I got an AR, started customizing it, getting a new dust cover.
Okay,
got a site.
That's cool.
An EOTech. And then I got
It's
a
nicer than anything I have. Jealous.
I got a lever action 4570. I haven't even been able to shoot it yet, but I'm going to get a can on it. And
This weekend?
I don't know if I'll have the can yet, but yeah, I need to go shoot it. I haven't shot that one yet.
Okay.
I shot the AR. It's fun.
So I like to ask people those questions too, because it's get like, hey, you hit your goals, you did something great, you worked hard over a long period of time, you exceeded your goals. Like you should reward yourself. I mean, I know you always think about your family first and you take care of them, but then every once in a while too, it's great to reward yourself for your hard work.
Treat yourself.
Clothes.
Treat yourself.
Fragrances.
Treat yourself.
Massages.
Treat yourself.
Mimosas.
Treat yourself.
Fine leather goods.
Treat yourself.
It's the best day of the year.
The best day of the year.
Yeah. Hey, one of the things that I know, Todd, is you're huge on impact and giving back, right? And that's how you sell. You really like to make an impact on your clients' lives, and you kind of want to tell your story to hopefully inspire somebody else, and I'm always telling you, keep going. Don't take your foot off the gas yet. Keep progressing, and as you continue to grow and share your message, your impact will get wider and wider. So, I'm really happy that we were able to have you on and tell your story today, and I want to challenge you publicly now to continue to put one step, in front of the other, and continue to expect more out of yourself. So you can have a greater impact on more clients and other agents out there. That's the way to do so, is to keep going and keep growing.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that.
Love it.
Sounds good, man.
Yeah.
Todd, you're
Thanks
awesome.
for the
We
time,
love you.
dude.
Super appreciate you and your family. The Moffitts are really core to the Agent Boost family and community, and you guys are awesome.
Are we going to put a hashtag Moffitt Mafia on this one?
Yeah, we've been called that for a while.
Yeah.
All right.
Every
Love
time
it.
a new Moffett comes on.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Appreciate you, Todd.
Yep.
See you.
Agent